Module 2, Chapters 4 through 6. We're going to be talking about planning the meeting, budgeting, site selection, and property selection in this module. Your learning outcomes for Chapter 4 through 6 include the following. You will be able to define meeting components and meeting objectives. You will understand meeting pace and tempo. You'll know how to make arrangements for professional speakers. You'll know how to develop meeting programs, how to select appropriate sites for the size and type of meetings, how to assess the merits of different sites, how to make your site selections and conduct inspections, how to determine property operations efficiencies, and how to develop a meeting budget. So this is a very important module. Planning the meeting. To start planning the meeting, you will need to know if you have a meeting sponsor, what is the meeting purpose, what is the type of the meeting, and how many participants will be attending the meeting. What is the mission of the meeting? Draft program. This is where you're putting together the draft of your meeting program. You'll need an outline of your program needs, and you do the first rough draft. This is your best guess about the program components that you'll need to achieve the meeting's objectives. What are the parts that will make up the whole? The components of your meeting program will include, but are not limited to, the timing of the meeting session, free time, entertainment, food and beverage plans, possible speakers or presenters, the size and the number of meeting rooms, and a ballpark estimated total cost. Size of the meeting. The size of the meeting is determined by the number of the people expected to attend. And the size of the meeting will determine the type of meeting because it will determine a lot of the other components within your meeting. So there's a huge difference if you have 25 people or 2,500 people. The meeting history is the best indicator of attendance. So if this meeting's been held before, that is the best idea of how many people will be attending in the current years or in the future years. So know the history of the meeting attendance. The program content and the level of interest. So the size of the meeting, you'll need to know the program content and the level of interest. And what is the cost? What is the cost of having a meeting? It'll be a lot more expensive if your meeting is in Hawaii, for example, the access to the meeting, nonstop flights versus having to connect in various areas. So the size of the meeting will be determined by these things: the number expected to attend, the meeting history, the program content and how much interest there is, and the cost in getting to the meeting. Length of the meeting. How long will it take to achieve the meeting objectives? Now that's the duration of the meeting. How much time is associated with the meeting itself? Within that, we're going to talk about the opening session, the timing of the program sessions, and the pacing of the program sessions. Now, these are components of meetings that will determine the length and the duration, which means how long each of these will last and how quickly they occur. So if you're going to have an opening session, what's the length of that? How quickly do you move through your program content? Is the pacing, and the timing may be how much space you have in between your program sessions, the components. So the length of the meeting is important to determine when you're doing your planning. What are the program components that you are planning? The components could be things such as the meeting sessions. Meeting sessions can be general sessions where everyone attends. They can be breakout sessions. You'll also hear the term concurrent sessions, and that's where there are subjects that you choose to attend in smaller meeting rooms. A program component would be their planning for your presenters, your professional speakers. Look on page 48 in your textbook for the speaker checklist. Be familiar with that. You'll be developing these kinds of checklists for your assignments and for your projects. Methods of presentation are considered in the program components. Will you have speeches? Will you have special events as a component? Your audio-visual presentations. There's an important audio-visual checklist on page 43 you'll need to be familiar with. That's a checklist of planning your audio-visual needs for your meeting. Will you be having panels? That's where there's a head table with various people speaking on subjects. Will you have a small group interchange where small groups are meeting and talking with each other? Will you have a computer assisted interaction that might be video streaming or a presentation? So these are components you'll need to consider when you're doing your planning. Additional important program components include food and beverage service, which includes things such as coffee breaks, meals, receptions. There's different kinds of food and beverage services that may be alcoholic beverages. You may have a bar. Exhibitions and trade shows may be a component of your overall program. And free time activities. Free time activities for the attendees as well as activities for companions would be components you would plan for your meeting. Budgeting is a very, very important part of your program planning. Appendix A in your book, pages 197 through 203, indicates the information about budgeting for your program. This should really be a critical part of your textbook, and I think this is lacking in the fact that this is in an appendix because I cannot overemphasize how important a budget is. So you need to know what a budget is. This is not just a list of expenses. The budget includes the revenues that you're expecting, where they're coming from, the sources, the amounts. It does include all the expenses and itemize those by line items. And then it also includes the bottom line, and this is the profit, the loss, or the break-even of the event. So it's critical that you understand budgeting when you're planning meetings. In terms of budgeting, when you're doing the revenue portion of that, what is the income? Where does it come from? Well, the money that comes into the budget includes the following, but is not limited to these, but this gives you an idea. These can be company proceeds, where the company pays for the meeting. You can have sponsors who underwrite or support the meeting financially by giving a contribution or in-kind products. So sponsors will be talking about within the textbook. Advertising, you could be selling advertising. There could be advertising within the program, so money can be produced through advertising in the meeting. There are donors who just give financial support for certain kinds of meetings. You may charge a registration fee and generate revenue, and there may be fees associated with trade shows and exhibitors within the meeting itself. What would expenses be in the meetings? Meeting details determine the expenses, and they are including these items but are not limited to these items. Number of participants, the location, the meeting size and the length, the program components, your marketing and PR programs, materials, the function room costs, decorations, the costs associated with transportation and meals, speaker fees, audiovisual costs, entertainment, meeting planning personnel plus their overhead, insurance, incidentals, contingencies. So these are all expenses that are associated with general meetings, and your meeting that you're planning will have its own particular expenses. What systems do you use in planning a meeting? You use accounting systems. We just talked about budgeting. Payment methods. What happens to the fees that people are charged, the registration fees? How do the attendees pay? Authorizations. So you need authorizations. Who are approving various parts of the meeting? Who approves the components? Who approves the speakers? Who approves what you might be planning for the meeting? So you need to know the authorizations and how you obtain those. Establishing credit with the hotel. So there's a system that you have to go about there. You may be filling out a credit application. And contingencies. You need to plan for things that you're not expecting. So this is oftentimes a expense associated with contingencies, but what are the backup plans? The selection of the site for your meeting is a major consideration. We've talked about the meeting size, but that is a determining factor. What are your organizational characteristics? What type of venue are you looking for in terms of your meeting and your companies that are coming or attending the meeting, the individuals? What are the organizational characteristics? What are the transportation and accessibility issues? Is it easy to transport people from the airport to the location? And what about accessibility? And this is accessibility in terms of handicap accessibility as well as the accessibility issues of how easy it is to get to your location. What is the timing? What are the days of the week? Are there holidays? Are there events that conflict? What is the season or the climate? What is the cost associated with the site itself? What are the expenses that you're going to have to pay? What free time activities are available within the hotel, within the community for your attendees as well as your companions? Additional considerations would include if you're having international meetings, you have language barriers and issues there, but if you're international, you have different considerations. What about outside contractors? Are they easy to find? Are they able to deliver and do the work at your site? What is the image associated with the site that you select? Is it something in Hawaii where people are going to want to plan a vacation around, or is it a meeting in a downtown urban core? And outside assistance, is there available vendors for other assistance that you might need in the area? Is it a major metropolitan area, or is it in a remote location where you may not be able to get outside assistance if you need to? So these are some of the major considerations to take into your planning process. Request for proposal, RFP. This is a very important concept for you to understand and is not detailed in your textbook. A request for proposal is a critical part of a meeting planning process. It's an outline of meeting specifications which is organized in a way to communicate the meeting's needs. It saves time, it minimizes errors, and the most important factor of the RFP is it allows for the same set of specifications for the competitive bids from several hotels or convention centers. It allows for continuity, it allows for consistency so that you know you're getting the bids from each of the vendors on the same set of specifications. So you need to determine your meeting's goals and objectives before putting the RFP together. And you need to have the whole program or the whole agenda of what you're going to be doing. That's a little bit of a misnomer when you say the agenda for the whole thing. This would be your plan, your master plan. And within your master plan, you would have the meeting name, the meeting goals, the meeting program agenda, the meeting history, the meeting budget, the dates and the times, the flexibility that you might have, the attendee profile, the number of sleeping rooms, or a block. That's another term for sleeping rooms, a block. So know what an RFP is and know the importance of it. Property selection, major considerations. Major considerations include the meeting size. You'll need to know your exhibit space requirements, your function room requirements. Function room's another name for a meeting room or wherever you're going to have your function. Guest room requirements. You need to know the cost. You need to know the location. The location would include center cities, suburbs, airport areas, potentially resorts or alternative types of properties. Efficiency and service. There's a checklist in your book on page 75 about how to determine the efficiency and service of a site. Property liability and damage insurance coverage. So that's a major consideration also when you're determining what property you might select. Property inspection. You'll want to visit the properties to be able to compare them to each other. It's possible to plan a large meeting completely on the internet, and it can be done, but it's best if you can visit the properties and compare them yourself. And it's also good if you can go another time or before or after your tour incognito, meaning they don't know that you're there, so you can observe by yourself without being on an official tour. You may be given complimentary rooms when you go to inspect. When you do inspect, take a general evaluation form with you that you've created so that you can compare the properties to each other consistently. You want to evaluate the general property, the guest rooms, the function rooms or the meeting rooms, the exhibit hall space. Other considerations to take into account would be security, the hotel security, safety, the general crime in the area, the proximity of emergency services facilities. So you're looking at the property itself as well as other attributes. In your text, there's a property selection checklist on page 77 through 80. So you'll want to be aware of that and know how to put a checklist together when you're looking at various properties to compare. The general property, the guest rooms, the function rooms, and the exhibit space are all major components. Negotiating the cost. You'll want to negotiate with the hotel or the convention center for the best price. They'll give you a price based on the RFP. If you've made a selection, you'll want to negotiate still for better